Hey, this is the Kubeflow Notebooks meeting for the 20th of March, 2025. Uh, we'll quickly go over some introductions if there's anyone new here in the meeting. We will talk about what we've been doing for 1.0 release, for the Kubeflow 1.10 release. I don't think we have anything specifically under the 2.0 topics, but we will talk about what we're working on and what we need to do next. And then obviously status updates. So is there anyone new here who wants to say hi or who's joined for the first time? Feel free to, you can turn on your mic or you can just type in the chat or whatever you want to do. If not, then that's fine too. Awesome. Okay. Hi. Okay, let's quickly go over what we did with 1.0. So we did cut a final RC2 on the Kubeflow repo. We will see if this is happy to be the final 1.10 version, which includes obviously all the components that are in the Kubeflow repo, which is everything with notebooks and also the core dashboard kind of stuff and profile controller kind of stuff. Oh, interesting. Now that I've pushed all these packages here, they all just appeared on the sidebar here.
Yep.
Interesting. I thought that you had to manually associate these. We'll come back to that. Okay, so the main thing that we did in the release candidate was we migrated, thank you, Eda, for a lot of work here. We worked together, but Eda did a lot of the heavy lifting, which is to make the migrate to GitHub Container Registry. The reason we did that is because the Docker Hub was previously what we were using, and Docker Hub is about to have very intense limits for most people, such that you wouldn't really be able to install Kubeflow anymore because we would exceed the limits just by installing Kubeflow on a normal user. And it's not that we don't like Docker Hub, it's that there is no easy way on Kubernetes, because Docker Hub needs auth in this case, to authorize all of your, even if you paid Docker Hub, it would be impossible to do. So we're migrating to GitHub Container Registry, which has more lenient limits. The changes happen from April 1st. They might not happen, but you can look it on Docker Hub's website. Rate limits. You know, you can figure out if they actually they changed this once already, so they might change this again. But who knows? April 1st, I think, is KubeCon. So I mean, I don't know. I feel like they may not do it on that day. You know, because that's. I think it's KubeCon, right? Anyway, yeah. Which would be a bit of a dick move to make a change that breaks lots of Kubernetes clusters on the day that everyone's not actually working. Okay. So anyway.
The amount of demos that they're gonna crash.
Oh my, I hadn't even thought about that. That's really funny, actually. Okay. Yes, so we did that migration. Hopefully it's been successful. We haven't migrated the existing container tags yet, and that's one of the things we'll do next, just so that people who have older versions can keep using their version without updating, but just use the newer images, hopefully. So if someone has distribution or other things like that. So for example, you know, if you, I mean, these notebook servers obviously, yeah, so you can kind of see that this now has an RC10, but also the reason it has these really old RCs is because I backed up, historically I backed up many years ago, all of the ECR images, because we've moved container registries way too many times. So we were originally on GCR when Google ran the project, then we were on ECR when Amazon was donating that, and then we moved to Docker for some projects, and then now we're moving to GitHub, and I hope that that's the final move. I have, just as a side note, started discussions with the CNCF about whether we can use the Kubernetes registry, because that is sponsored by every cloud vendor and is obviously never going to be not free, if you know what I mean. The only issue is that our images are very, very big. So some of our images will be 30 plus gigs, so like the notebook ones. So I'm not sure if they're really set up to distribute those kind of images through that CDN. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I when I doing the pull request, I got this question is like, I hope GitHub doesn't block us, right?
So even if they do, I feel like GitHub is probably still going to become the standard way, and then there'll be, you know, like they'll probably keep it. My suspicion is that yes, they will eventually put limits because it's unreasonable to give this stuff for free. Kubeflow might be in the exception because we're a huge project, so we might be, whatever they choose to do, they probably will let big projects like Kubeflow continue to do. So I think we're probably fine. But even if they didn't, I think the community will probably standardize around GitHub anyway. So like, and in the case that they don't, I'm still we'll see what the Kubernetes community says about whether we can use the CNCF's one, which again is sponsored by all the major cloud vendors. So you hit it with like a CDN URL, and then it routes you to whoever it was available to give it to you, rather than being on a specific one, which solves the problem permanently if that ever changes, you know? So, okay. If you happen to know people at the CNCF or are involved in the K8S container registry or something, whatever it's called, yeah, this one. If you're involved in this project, please reach out on Slack. I would love to talk. I've reached out through the CNCF service desk though. Okay. So the one thing I do want to do, and if you happen to have really fast internet or a good script to do registry mirroring, does anyone have that? Like, just on the call, does anyone have a good, like, I know that there's tools like from Google called Crane and a few others that are good. The problem is if you just do a Docker pull and then a Docker push, it won't actually work. The reason being that when you pull, you only pull one. Well, actually, it might work if you do the right CLI commands, but it won't pull the multi arches because there's actually three architectures for a lot of these images: PowerPC, x86, and ARM. So you need to use a thing that is capable of pulling all of them and pushing all of them at once, or maybe there's a way to do it some other way. But I want to at least migrate the V tags so that, again, once April 1st happens, that if users do start having problems, that they can go, let's say, for example, to, you know, notebook controller, and then they can use, just update their deployments to use this one rather than the other one if they need to. So I'm going to do that, but we need to figure out if someone else has a script to do it already, that's even easier. Of course, you need I'd say we're conservatively moving maybe like 10 to 20 terabytes worth of images. So like maybe more. So obviously I'll try and do it on like a proper, also, and doing so you might get rate limited by GitHub as well. So when I did the initial migration from ECR, when the images were much smaller, I did get rate limited. I think it took like 3 days maybe to do. So yeah, just so if anyone in the call, yes, no, maybe. Okay, cool. Okay.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I don't have a script, Matthew. I mean, I have like a gigabit line, so I'm happy to divide and conquer with folks. If it's a matter of like, we have a script that people are getting rate limited, like I'm happy to, you know, jump in on that. So
well, we just need to set up a script first. Like that's the first step, right? Is to, and then, like, so the last time I think I just literally used a, well, the way I did it last time was very basic. I just had a bash loop from a CSV that listed all the images from source to target locations, and then listed a regex filter on the tags that they wanted. And then what I did was I just created a fake file when the move succeeded on the local machine. And then, so that way I could just check whether the file, whether it had already been moved. And so I just ended up with a folder with thousands of files in it that were just like marker files. That's just how I just looped through it. And then when it rate limited, I had it wait, obviously. And then I did it on a couple of different internet connections as well. That's how I did it last time.
I'll start a thread in the Slack channel, and like I said, I'm happy to help there.
That sounds great. We should definitely, yeah.
I just put in the chat here, and something that one of the Red Hat folks from support, he told me that they use this to move stuff on the registry, but that is all I know.
Yeah, this won't work.
No, it's Scoop is the tool. Yeah, this is where they tell you that problem. Yeah, there is a tool.
Yeah, because there's one that I'm aware of. So this looks, there's definitely going to be a couple, and if this is good, then that's great. There's one that Google made a long time ago, but it's really painful to use. So if this is better, then that's great. Like,
because they have to move stuff between public registries and private registries, and I asked them, and they use this.
That sounds great. I think I've seen this before. Yeah, this looks great. I'll definitely look at this. Should we use possible tools to make this easier? And then there was also one called Crane Google Containers. And this is correct, but like this one. Okay, cool. So these are the main two. This one's been around forever, but that one might even use that one because this is actually a Go library. So that one actually might use that one internally, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, if you take a look on the Go mod, maybe.
It probably does, in fact, use that one. So anyway, Okay, so the other thing is, so we will cut the 1.10 final release candidate once we've got confirmation. We can't do that until the manifest repo, sorry, not that one. Yeah, this is about migrating code. We'll talk about that in 2 seconds. The final RC will cut it once the manifest repo is confirmed that they're happy with it, and they won't cut their release candidate for RC3 of Kubeflow until Katib has migrated their images to GHCR. Okay. We won't go into it much because I want to get into Notebooks 2.0 because we've got, keep the whole meeting for that. But
Matthew,
yeah.
one question. What is the priority for migrating the repos? Is something like super urgent or?
For the dashboard, it's higher than for the notebooks, I'd say. The dashboard doesn't get a lot of commits on it anyway, but the migration, it's more that we're kind of in an untenable position with the KSC members wanting us to do it, so we don't really have a choice. We're not going to be able to do another release on the Kubeflow for dashboard at least. So we did set up the new repo, to be clear. I did make a nice little README that explains some stuff. And obviously we have the issue templates and things. Oh, the other thing is we do have these the stale bot now. A lot of issues got closed, the ones that we didn't do 21 days ago. Now the same thing is going to happen on notebooks, so we need to do that like today or something, actually. So this is actually a task for everyone because it affects notebooks 2.0. Anything with a stale label is going to get closed in the next few days. So everything here, there's quite a few of them, 70 of them, in fact. We're going to need to make sure that any of these which are actually not stale or are still going to be done need to get either frozen lifecycle or commenting on them. If you comment on them, it'll still happen again in 70 days or whatever it is, because it will go back to stale again. But so we need to this is probably the most important task really for Notebooks 2.0, which is just, there's also some 1.0 stuff in here because all the issues were migrated from Kubeflow. And some of these are really old, as you can tell, but it doesn't mean that they're invalid. Some of them might be like, okay, we are doing this, but frozen it, link it into some kind of Notebooks 2.0 release. Maybe we should make a Notebooks 2.0 release tracking issue anyway. I don't know. I'll think about it. So yeah, the way you do this is, say you wanted this one to not be stale anymore, you would either comment and it will make it not stale, but it won't prevent it becoming stale in the future. Or you could go lifecycle frozen, and that will add the frozen lifecycle label, which means it will never be stale, but it also means that we'll never get pinged about this issue again and it might stay here forever. So normally you do this when you're like, yes, this is a valid issue, but we don't have any actions on it right now for either resourcing constraints, we don't have any resource to do it, or because it's like a long-term thing. So some of these issues I'm going to bet are going to be solved in Notebooks 2.0, and I don't know what we should do for the ones that are. Like, maybe we should link them to the Notebooks 2.0 tracking issue and then do frozen, so there was I believe it's on this one, right? Yeah. Like Notebooks 2.0 does have an issue. Oh my gosh, there's too many of these. Yeah, this one here. We can maybe link them to this issue because this is probably the one we'll update once. So 85 on notebooks, Kubeflow notebooks. I don't know if we can do this in a controlled manner, but how are we going to do this? Do we have anyone who wants to help? Because otherwise these things.
Yeah, I can deal with the front end and back end for notebooks.
Yeah, please do. Yep.
So we don't need to link because I think they are leaking. It's just to put lifecycle frozen, right? The label there.
No, so for the ones that are for actually active development work, I think there's a good case to be made that don't freeze them unless they're actually not going to be done in the next 60 days. Or if they're like, because like this will keep reminding us that they're not done yet, like.
But it's 7 days or 6 days?
No. So the way we can change these configs, so everyone feel free to chime in. But the current config is this. It is days before stale, and then 21 days after that becomes stale, it gets frozen. And stale means it has no interaction. This affects pull
requests.
Okay,
so you'll comment. I will comment audacious. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for the ones that you're like, for the stale lifecycle frozen is more like, okay, that's an issue from 2022. Is this still valid? Yes, no. If it's not valid, let it run to stale, and it'll be closed with not planned. Otherwise, just close it if you want. Or of course, if you come to ones like some of these ones, it's hard to know what decision to make. But okay, cool. Let's move on to that. So if you and Eder and I can probably quickly look through that at some point today, because we really need to make sure that doesn't all get closed, because it's going to cause us an absolute nightmare if they do. Okay. I won't talk about this. We'll come back to this later. Okay. So tracking, obviously we did all these work streams, which we can expand later. Let's look at what people have been working on. So who wants to go first? Paulo, maybe? Because you've got a lot of stuff here.
Yes, I can start. Hello.
Hi.
So yeah, my PR with the initial UI for the workspace creation was merged yesterday. It has the first step only. There's a screenshot on the PR. Well, it's a little outdated. I removed the left column with the filtering, the label filtering, because we decided in the last meeting that it wouldn't exist for the kinds. And then I'll proceed working on the next steps and break a few tests so more people can join as well. I actually have one other person already assigned to the properties step. I've also added there on the document a kind of a summary, a very small, compact summary of what I intend to add in each of those steps. So to see if it makes sense for the steps that we decided. And there is also 3 questions at the bottom, just to make sure we have the correct fields. Because there is no description field for workspaces in the API, so I just wanted to make sure that wouldn't be this field, or we plan to add on the model. And then environment variables, I don't see anywhere in the API as well. I'm not sure if we will add for this first version. And how would be best to add labels and annotations in the pod template section of the workspace when we send the payload to the BFF with the post.
So the first one is, I guess, if you think that there is value to this, like like users, in my experience, don't really use description fields when they exist, but maybe it's not like it's difficult to add, but it's just a new field under this Bono metadata, presumably. For workspace, obviously kinds have it, but I don't know. That's up to you, I guess. If you can think of a good UI flow for it to happen and how to display it, because where would it be displayed, right? On the overview page, where is it going to be visible?
It could be on the details, the full text, and yeah, for workspace, I would say only in the details, because the table has already a lot of columns.
I just feel like it's not going to get used, and if it's like, I don't know how useful it would be to users, because metadata tends to get out of date, right? Especially on really fast moving things. I just wonder if it's like, I'm not against the idea of it, but I feel like the question of how to do it is more important than the question of if we should have it. You know, like what does it look like? What is the intended purpose of it? Like is something more like user tags a more useful thing, you know, or something like that, rather than trying to do like word descriptions, because maybe that's what most people would be doing anyway, you know. Like,
yeah, I personally like the labels to organize stuff because they can be filtered, but not sure if there is a use case where the user would like to have a description for some reason.
so we'll just leave it. Let's say like let's start without having it. Can discuss in future versions if users want. We could also consider having user applied labels. The question is, would they be global or local to namespace? Could be global or per name. I mean, they could just be labels, you know. Anyway, or workspace. Okay, environment variables. This is a good question. What would be a use case where you would want an environment variable?
I'm not sure. It's just because I saw in other places and mockups as well that we had environment variables.
Yeah, at Red Hat, we extensively use this to configure.
But that's not per workspace, right?
Yes, per workspace, yeah.
What's an example then?
Do you have Harshad? You're here.
Yeah, I think last time we were discussing, right, like with respect to this credentials, where
Yeah.
AWS credentials can be given as environment variables. Apart from that, people do training side of things, which kind of want their environment variables to be set on the pod itself before it starts, so they can run these kind of things. They do it on both sides, on the pod creation itself, also inside the notebook. So they use it both sides. That's what we are seeing in our user base right now.
Wait, where did we talk about this? We talked about it under.
Last week you were discussing on I forgot the term. There was another
Like you're having a config. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where we put
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
We were discussing
I think it's the compatibility selectors that's highlighted yellow there. You just scrolled past it.
Yeah, but that's for something else. We definitely talked about it in this relation to this, but I don't think we had a.
probably it's in I need to check where we wrote the details, but yeah, those are the fields where we're using. Those are the things which we can say from a user perspective, right? Then
The
there's a
S3 credentials as well, right, Harshad? Especially like this.
Yeah, like I said,
Well, S3
S3
credentials come from service accounts usually, right?
depends, right? Like there are certain other methods also. Some people would like it in it. Like they want to just test something, so they would like to add just an environment variable for a test case instead of doing the whole service account setup and doing all those things.
Yeah, so the only issue with environment variables is it's like leaving it to the admin, like things that start before the things that are installed by the admin could break things that are installed by the admin. But obviously we can reorient it, but we can't like, for example, there's so many things you could break, but like, I don't know, like, let's think about specific use cases, because I don't think we should ever expose. The goal is, well, okay, it's a good question as to whether we should expose environment variables as a thing in the Spawner UI. That's a question. I don't think we currently support it in the workspace, so we can't do it in that sense. But like,
Right.
I feel like thinking of ways beyond, we currently have something close to it with the pod defaults, like mutation webhook thing. Might be a way of doing it, but it is a way of doing it right now, to be very clear, even with Notebooks 2.0, because you can do it through label selector. Pod default is like a CRD that exists in a namespace. It's not great, but I feel like configs or something. I think we came to this problem as well, which is that most configs that involve environment variables are either configs for your app or they're like credentials. And credentials are going to be per namespace. Configs for your app might be per team or something. So I don't know.
So this could be this problem state needs to be addressed in wearing different hats, right? Like for example, there is a user thought, there is a dev thought, and a tester thought, right? So if you look at this perspective of just user side of things, the one example, it's just an example, right? Providing the credentials, you can provide it through environment variable, but that is not just one method. There are other user cases, as I was saying, like if they are doing a tool where they want to build something and they want to test it in different methodology, they tend to put those environment variables on the notebook creation end in 1.0. In here, it will be the workspace creation, right? Then there's the development side of things. Let's say we are the ones who are creating this notebook images and testing them through the workspaces. We could use this environment variables to effectively test few things, right? For example, the plugin inclusions. We were discussing last time also, there are a lot of Jupyter Lab plugins, which if we are developing or if we are testing, we could use environment variables to test that. Simple example, because we have all gone through it. Like if you take Elira, right? It's a Jupyter Lab plugin you included. If I want to test someone's code onto that, I could just simply put environment variables to use that, because Jupyter Lab, in that Jupyter Lab plugin, there are multiple environment variables which they mention that you can use to do various kind of testing or various kind of aspects, right? So that's another example from a dev perspective. If it's a tester perspective, I can also share, like if tester just wants to test a notebook image which Kubeflow has provided and they want to test it from different multiple things, they can directly use this environment variables to test different scenarios rather than having to ask for a different image every time or go into the image and then do all the checks. So like it's the ground which we are covering, right? As you said, everything can be done in a different way. People can just embed everything inside a notebook and test it. It's just like if there should be an option on the workspace as well, so that it's easier from that, unless we see a security flaw there.
Yeah, so there's definitely anything that involves letting users arbitrarily mount environment variables is a problem for many possibilities, either because they could, if the admin doesn't want to let them see secrets in the namespace, for example, or something, then that would be a way of doing it. I think there is definitely an idea that you've just given me, which is that for some of those use cases, we currently have 2 different options per workspace, but theoretically, we could have another one for pod template kind, which is, kind of similar to what pod defaults are right now, with like a list of selected options rather than one option, and those options could be defined per kind. And I don't know what those options could do in them, but
Also, like I want to just clarify, like because whenever we say environment variables, we are not mounting them. They are environment variables from Kubernetes. They are not the volume mounts, right? That's what we are discussing. Are we on the same page here?
well, there's 2 ways to set environment variables. You can either set them from a config map or environment or secret,
Yeah, and
but
you
they
can
don't
also
get
do it,
updated
and
until
you
restart.
can also do a normal literals also. But yeah, so config maps and secrets, right? That's what we are discussing. Environment variable setting.
Yeah, because I don't think we'd allow people to set them from secrets.
Yeah, so config map is a thing, right? That's what we are also saying. User can create a user can create a config map and put.
But then we have the
random
problem of
variables.
environment variables don't get updated until you restart the pod, and then it's like, do we automatically
Yeah,
restart the
absolutely.
pod, or what do we
We
do?
don't, right? Like that's what we that's what we have, right? We are not restarting unless user clicks on the button of start and stop.
What would a third option here look like? Sorry, Andy, I can see you've got your hand up, but like, what would a third option look like here that does some of that for the user, where the admin defines workspace kinds with like options? Like, for example, as you're saying, I think the obvious ones are stuff like pre and post install things, like run pip, like something crazy, but like run pip install or something like that, or clone a git registry, or do something, like you can imagine sidecar containers or things like that, or extra init containers being an option. But should they all be under one category of just like extra things? Or anyway.
Yeah, I would have just thought about nvar somewhere in that option, like a list, which can just signify which config map it's going to mount to or how it's going to mount
I
it
don't think
back.
we'd ever be able to do it from config maps, because that's the workspace kinds are global and workspaces are namespaced.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't know for a fact that the config map would exist in a specific namespace. But anyway, Andy, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Just a trivial point. If you go to your in the meeting notes doc, I finally found it. It's the workstreams NB 2.0 section, the workstreams section.
Oh, yes, I forgot about this.
There, and then that last bold text, think about if on the controller. That's where we captured the high level of that. But yeah, so it's this thought of like workspace, and this touches on nvars, volumes, init containers, talking about some of the stuff you were just like the pip install and checkout repo. Not that there's any answers here, but this was where we were starting to try to flesh out these thoughts.
Yeah.
Just going back to the thought which you shared, Matthew, like we wouldn't know what is in the namespace. I am understanding as from the notebook controller perspective, when the notebook controller is spinning up a notebook in a namespace through the workspaces, it would know in which namespace the workspace is running, right? So we have the method to know if a config map is existing there or not.
Okay, but what would the workspace definition is intentionally abstracted from the pod, right? Like, this is the workspace definition.
Right.
So what would the user be doing to specify something? This is for pod template one.
Yeah, so inside this pod template, as we have volumes, we will have an environment variable as well, right? A section for that. And in that section, we can specify it's accepting a config map. And that config map creation state, if that's the question, like who is going to create that config map? That could be a user, or that could be the front end side of notebook controller. The front end side and on the back end side can catch up onto this, and then it could be like on the front end we give an option of environment variable in a workspace. You want to add do you want to add it into a config map? And as soon as they create a config map gets created, that information is passed to this workspaces in the controller side, that uh, environment variable X and config map to be mounted Y, and that's what the controller will take into.
I'm pretty hesitant to do that. I just think that's very disconnected from what people are going to use notebooks for, or what our intention for people to use notebooks for. Like, I fail to see any use case where it actually improves the product for most users. Like, it's tying it way too much to Kubernetes.
Mhm.
Right?
So today, if you were to use this workspace and you were to test a notebook, but you want to change something in a plugin, how would you do that?
What would you want to change in a plugin?
I want to test, like I know only few plugins, but let's say if I want to use the Jupyter Lab Git plugin, right? Let me find that.
Sure. It's installed in most of our images, yeah.
Yeah. Let me look into that. I think they also have some environment variables that you can set. So I'm just asking, like,
Or
where
wouldn't
would you
the
set
admin
that?
just set that in their image? Because like you don't know whether that plugin's even installed.
So how would that admin test that? That's what I'm failing to understand. Would the admin just do it everything on the side, nothing to do with notebook controller? They are building the image on the side, and they're going to test everything on the side and then test it
I don't
too?
really understand what you would be changing though. Like, it's like
Right.
like
I'll find some like exact scenarios here and then share it with you.
because there's
That
also
should give
like,
me
so
some
for
time to
example, in
find.
I'll quickly show you, like we do set a lot of environment variables already in our ones. There's many different ones in various places depending on like, you know, CUDA and whatnot. But if you just look at the Jupyter one even, there is some in the start script that solve various problems that the user might not understand. Like these are really complicated, right?
Right.
But this is one level of environment variable. This is a system. Like I say that admin environment variables. We're talking here about the user environment variables.
Yeah, I just don't understand why the user would ever want to set one for any reason other than credential.
Yeah, credential is the most used case that come to me.
And in that case, we should be abstracting that one specifically. But like, I'm not sure. I just don't understand, like, because the whole idea here is that we're trying to give the user an experience that's like, create a notebook rather than think about a pod or anything.
But yeah, but we are talking about this first. That is optionally, right?
Yeah, the ability to set a custom environment variable, it's not like we couldn't do it. I'm not saying we can't. I'm just trying to understand why a user would ever want to do it, and to what extent we would support it. Like the
Harshad, to pass the pipeline, we use this as well, right?
We do.
Yeah, to pass the pipe. When I click on deploy, go ahead, Harshad, explain this.
So there's a scenario where, let's say, because we don't know which customers there are, and let's say we are providing this notebook images, right? And if you want to specify certain kind of certificates or certain kind of environment variables which you want to pass it to Elira, right? Like additional plugin which will talk to the Kubeflow pipelines. So the way we do it is we allow users to add this environment variables on the notebook. That environment variables are then passed to the Elira plugin so that it can work through the pipelines. But it's also something to do with credential, but the same statement goes there.
I mean, that if it's something that not the user would care about, we could just allow under image config you to set environment variables here. I think we talked about already, but obviously you can also set this is on the workspace kind. You could also set a global one, but that obviously wouldn't work if you have Jupyter with and without different plugins. You could set it here, or you could set.
But each user will be will have a different how I set this in workspace kind.
Well, in the case of that one, that's actually perfect because we have this idea of a templated extra environment variable here. But so you could just have the username be part of it. Well, the username is not a thing, but you know what I mean, profile name.
No, but it's something that requires user input before spawn the workbench.
What would they what would they put in?
For instance, the URL of something that I want to consume in a plug. Like Lara needs to know the address of the pipeline they're going to fetch.
But this is a notebook.
But I'm using a Lyra inside the notebook. When I hit on deploy on a Lyra, I need to deploy for some
To
pipeline
something.
server.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which something? If this user
Sure.
via
Okay. Yeah, but that
environment
feels like an
variable, he can
admin thing,
pass.
right? Or is
No, I don't think it's for user because the user is that the one that create the server where I'm going to deploy the pipeline.
but then does that need to be there before Lyra starts?
Yes.
That seems like an Lyra problem, not an AS problem.
Yeah, but it's not. We take one specific example. It's like imagine that I want to pass the my Git credentials for the GitHub plugin that's running inside Jupyter. My GitHub user token, for instance. I'm always coming back. I'm trying to avoid to coming back for credentials because the credentials is the use case that I would like to paste my GitHub token before Jupyter startup. That's why we need one other reason to have environment variables.
Yeah. I don't know.
And
It's
I don't
interesting.
see I don't see how this hurts the user to have that as an option.
Well, I mean, because it raises the question, like specifically, like, what are we adding, right? You know, are we adding? Let me just close a lot of these. It's way too much. Are we adding just another one under here, which is called environment variables and can only be set from hard-coded values that the user has defined? Which obviously the danger with that is it lets them put secrets in here as well. Horribly dangerous. And then, or are we letting them mount from any secret in the namespace, which then introduces the possibility that you let the user do something that the admin doesn't want, or create a dependency in some complicated way between, because don't forget the workspace doesn't exist. The pod for each workspace doesn't always exist. In the sense that
I think we need to split the conversations here, Matthew. First,
yes,
do we as a community agree that there is a need for this type of feature? And then later we can discuss about the implementation.
I think there's like two very complicated distinction, two very complicated, like credentials through environment variables. I feel like it feels like it shouldn't be necessary. Like you should just be able to solve the problem within the notebook itself. But
no, but how you pass, for instance, my GitHub token for a workbench?
I'm not sure that you should ever do that. Like that just seems like a bad idea from a user perspective because sometimes the notebooks...
if you go in everything that talk with S3 with MIO, the first step for the notebook is to let the user paste an environment variable in the notebook, the S3 token, right? I don't want to do this every time. And I don't want to put this inside my source code. You understand? I think when I'm doing my tutorial, right? I'm going like S3 credentials, and I have to put a token in the first line of my notebook. I don't want to put this in my Git repository. I need to put this via environment variable. We agree on this, right?
It's one of the options. Yeah, you could do that.
Oh, yeah. But how I pass this environment variable for our Jupyter without having this option? You understand the use case is like I don't want to put in my Python notebook hard-coded my token.
But then
I
also,
need to,
yeah. But then also, whose token are you adding, right? Because like,
no, I'm adding my token because it's my example that I want to run.
But then most of the time, notebooks are going to be. I agree. You shouldn't hard code your token in any notebook. That makes sense.
So this will need to be in an environment variable, right? You agree?
Or it could just be a prompt, you know, pop up.
No, in Python notebook, I don't want to do a prompt. I'd like to put to make that work, you know.
Because also there's two distinct ways of using Kubeflow notebooks: as an individual person's access only one person accesses per notebook, or two people or more, a team is accessing the whole notebook together. In those cases, it's very dangerous to have credentials, right? You could have a team credential, I guess, but which is fine.
But you understand my use case.
Well, I understand it, but I feel like the solution is not related to environment variables specifically, because it could also be a file mounted. And because obviously environment variables are, the more useful mount is actually as a file, you know, as a config file somewhere on the host, you know, because then it rotates automatically as it changes. But like, I feel like there could be a new concept called, well, under volumes maybe even, called credential or something, and I don't know where we would define it, because maybe the first time you spawn a notebook in a namespace and then try and select a kind of credential that's defined in the kind or something, then you either it says, do you want to create this credential in the namespace? And then it's like, okay, if you want to create it, you either just copy and paste in the credential right now, and I'll paste and it will do it in. And then maybe the admin. So for example, let's say we have a new kind of not option, but credential template or something. I don't know. Maybe it needs to be its own CRD so that they can be shared across multiple ones. Who knows? But then maybe they could, because this helps solve the problem of, okay, this is a new namespace. Users might want to store an S3 credential. Maybe the front end also should validate that S3 credential actually works, or something like that. But when you paste it in, so like the user spawns a new notebook, that namespace has never had a S3 credential mount before, but then we're also just making so many assumptions on how to mount it.
It's not many assumptions. Is that environment is just for me an environment variable, and then people can use this whatever they want. If I plus A equals B to create my workspace, when I run when the controller spawns it,
I think it makes more, okay. So I think the solution for almost all these problems is very basic. Actually, what we should do is have managed secrets, and so the idea is that completely disconnected from the kind, but for the whole namespace, for all pod template kinds in that namespace. Sorry, for all. So effectively, this is. And maybe we could have a CRD that's global to the cluster for templates for these secrets. But initially, we could just have a very basic one, which is, okay, I'm spawning a new workspace. I want to sync securely in a way that is not stupid, store something that I don't want in the notebook itself, but have access to it in the notebook. Either a file or an environment variable, one of these two. When you first spawn the notebook, as one of the options of things you mount, and like under here, maybe a new section called secrets or something, and they could form a volume or environment variable mount. But what happens is it's just a new place that you can reference managed secrets. And the managed secret is probably going to be a new CRD owned by us that itself stores inside of a secret from Kubernetes or something. I don't know. And then you can only mount secrets like that. So you don't get access to every secret in the namespace. You only get access to the secrets that were created during a workspace creation flow, if you know what I mean, or by your admin automatically. You could create these managed secret CRDs automatically, or because the first option is just have some kind of label that indicates that it's allowed. Maybe that's fine too, on an existing secret. And then you can mount anything from one of those secrets, but you can't access all the secrets. I feel like that's the only safe. And then the question still remains: what do we do without it being its own CRD? How do we prevent someone removing the label?
Can I ask one question first? It's like during the wizard, workspace creation wizard, can we have an option for me to put some variables there and create this thing automatically?
That's the whole idea. That's the whole idea.
Okay.
That's the whole idea. The idea is that you come to a step, right?
This will be transparent for the user, right?
So let's come back to this exact thing. So like the flow, right? Polo, sorry we really got derailed. Oh my God, we've not got much time. Okay, so like I think this is a good discussion, but we need to wrap it up. So technically implementing it, we shouldn't talk about that somewhere else, but the idea would be that you select a kind, you select an image, you select a pod config, and now as either the final step maybe or another step, you have like secrets. And then you first off see all the secrets that are managed by notebooks in that namespace that were either created by your admin or by you in past spawns in that namespace. And again, we can talk about how templating, we can help users by saying like
we can generate forms based on
yes, we can have types of secrets, that like okay, here's a Git one, here's a like we can have some loose like a Docker credential, we can have like a GitHub credential, we can have like a S3 Amazon credential, we can have these things that are all connected together, and then these are per profile. They're namespace. They're not global at all. And so when you're getting to that fourth step or fifth step, it says here's all the ones that are already there. Do you want to mount any of these? And they could do anything from and if you do mount them, it's like, okay, do you want to mount them as an environment variable, or do you want to mount them as a file, I guess?
Yeah.
And and then if there's new, or you could say create a new one in this namespace, you know, and then it would prompt you to do that.
My suggestion as the next steps, maybe you, myself, or and Harshad can work in a proposal for this, and we can discuss on the next call, just to have, and then Harshad and I, we can find more use cases internally to Red Hat that we have for aim variables right now. Maybe we can, for us, build something that works. Make sense? To follow up with this next week?
Yeah. So let's agree that we agree that this is an important thing. I'm sorry, we need to move on. Yes.
Yeah. Just to move on for Jenny. That is way for. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Is there anything else, Paulo, you wanted to say before that? So we won't add environment variables directly. I don't think we'll ever do that. Like because 99.9% of these are just secrets, and I'm still a bit concerned about having environment variables. Maybe we could just only allow it to be files as well under like a /secrets path. You know what I mean? Just because I think that's honestly, actually, I'm actually very on board with that actually. And then the user can do something like set if their app needs an environment variable set, it just reads from, because that file will be updated by Kubernetes automatically as the secret updates. Whereas I think this is actually, that's critical. Let's just quickly write that down up here under overall, which is add the concept of credential mounts to workspace. And then like I'll just write quickly note. Whoa. So the notes would be like when spawning a workspace, we would surface the managed secrets, I guess, that already exist in the namespace for the workspace. We would then allow the user to mount these secrets as files on the pod containers. If we would probably only allow them to be mounted as files to avoid the issue with mvars not updating. And then the user can still set an mvar before their Python script runs based on the value of these files if needed. This also prevents users setting important mvars to random values. We can also limit the mount paths of these secrets to something like home secrets or /secrets or something. I don't know. Like, this is an idea. I don't know. One of these things. This is just things to discuss. So if you have ideas.
I just pasted a sample. I just find one of the code of the Python code. This is how most of the notebooks, for instance, talk with the Boto3 client with m variables.
Sure.
This is what I would like to support somehow on.
Shaded forms.
But just to be clear, Eder, to make sure I understand you though, right? I mean, I think the proposal here, you could easily just swap out os.environ with like a properties.read, right? So you don't care about the environment variable, it's just supporting the use case, right?
Yes, it's supporting the use case to have a way for user to do what they do here. And if it's files is the best way, I'm more than fine. As Matthew is proposing here.
Like get AWS. Okay, and then so like why? I'll just quickly put this so we remember in the future. Why are we doing this? Well, the reason is to avoid users storing sensitive things within their notebooks, e.g. credentials.
And I think to also avoid toil on admins, right? Because a lot of this stuff is very user centric
Yeah.
to like get admins out of this loop for.
Yeah. I stopped and I totally agree. I stopped challenging Matthew on the env variables when you put the use case that I can override something that the admin added that in purpose and break in multiple ways.
Yeah, that we just can't allow them to set environment variables like at
Yeah.
the start level. Like it's annoying, I know, but like I think that's something I'm never gonna agree.
Yeah,
I'm never going to allow.
I'm more focused on the use case that I put here to
Yes,
have
this
a
is the
way to
why.
write that
Yeah.
code. Yeah.
Because like we users to not allow users being able to mount any secret from their namespace, as the admin might not want this. To not allow users to set arbitrary env bus. Okay, my God. Sorry, guys. Okay, Jenny, what is your update? Sorry.
No problem. Hello, everybody. So yeah, I've been working with Paulo on the workspace creation wizard, so that got merged yesterday, which is great news. Yeah, great, exciting new feature. So next, that has unblocked the work on theming for the patternfly components that have been used to implement that. So that includes the progress stepper, which we were discussing at last week's community meeting, and also the card view. So I'll be working on theming those components that are coming from patternfly and making them look like MUI theme. And yeah, as continued work goes on for the additional features for the workspace creation wizard, I'll be continuing to review PRs and also just offer discussions and best practices for patternfly component implementation. And as well, as more features come in with that implementation of the workspace creation wizard, there's going to be more components to theme, as well as more patternfly components are used in those following screens. And yeah, that's it for me.
Cool. Anything else you're working on at the moment that's blocking you or anything?
Not at the moment. Thank you. Just I guess the only thing that's blocking is like the continued implementation of that workspace creation wizard. So as we implement more of that wizard, then there's going to be more components to theme. And yeah, but otherwise, yeah, it's great progress so far. And yeah, it's exciting work.
Yeah, just to take opportunity about Jenny, one thing that we need to talk, Paulo, probably on the next meeting is about the mocking thing that we are discussing about how to run the front-end code without the backend. Let's put on the list because I hold a pull request, but due to the time we can talk about this on next meeting. Just that I put on hold one pull request that way. Yeah.
If you want, I can start a thread on Slack as well, so we don't wait a whole week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Paula. Thank you. Yeah, good call out.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay. Anyone? Okay. Who? Sorry, it is 9, so people. I see people have lost a people already. But okay. So live. This person may not be here.
He had to drop, but he made a video we were discussing on Slack. If you want, you can take a look.
Yeah, I did see that.
Later, but...
I can quickly open it.
Yeah, I will have to go now as well.
Yeah, we won't view it right now. Okay, so who's not got a task? Who's left? Yeah.
Yeah, Mohammed sent a pull request with this one with complementing the work of the Open API generation.
Made follow-up PR for Swagger. There we go. Okay. I don't know what status it's at, but
yeah, me neither. I didn't take a look yet.
Okay, cool. And then yeah, that's no other new progress. Okay. So okay. Who else? Hand up, Andy? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I got slammed the past week, but so help me God, tomorrow I will be walking through the local developer guide. Things have settled as of today, so I will step through that and add comments to that. Apologies on the delay there, but 100% sure look at it tomorrow.
Where is it?
It's the third one down, 220. So I'll be walking through
sounds great.
Reproing that.
Oh, that's not a link. Okay. I think last time we Yeah, perfect. Okay. So yeah, that would be great to get some feedback on that before we merge it. Because I want to, yeah, that's the one thing I really want to get local development done, cleaned up on the controller, especially with tilt. Okay. Anything else? Anyone's here still? Okay. So anyone else got a task that they're going to work on this week? And if they want one as well? Oh my God, maybe we should put the stand up at the beginning. We probably should. Clearly these meetings, we need to find a way to, like, hopefully as things become less in flux, we will have less discussions about things that are not just implementing the things that we've agreed to implement. But I agree that there is a credential thing missing. We've had that come up 4 times already. You know, clearly some approach needs to be taken there.
Yep,
If someone wants to raise a specific proposal, I think it needs to look something like this. I don't know for a fact, is that it needs to be file-based. It needs to be user-driven, not admin-driven. There needs to be templates for kinds of secrets, and they should be able to create a new one. They should be able to see all the ones that were existing users. Yeah, they should be able to see all the ones that exist in the namespace already when they're creating a new workspace or editing an existing one. They should be able to create new ones based on templates that we define as either the admin or as the creators of Notebooks 2.0. And yeah, like it seems like there's a lot of this needs to be discussed. But I don't know what's the next step there. I guess we could make a proposal, I guess, or think about how to do it. Try and agree. So I think we should start with like we've kind of got pieces of a solution there, but like we probably need to be specific, you know, what does it look like to do? I don't know. Is it enough to block the other stuff? Not really, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't feel like it's not possible to do in parallel with everything else. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and no, we can do later. Even later, we can add this stuff. Yeah. The only thing that we need to check is the thing that Harshad mentioned about the plugins, that we need to be a good citizen, and sometimes there is some plugins that requires envvars, just for us to do informed decision on this.
Yeah, the environment variables for things that need to be running before the user starts, I think the logical way to do that is.
But we are open. Let's talk about this later and don't hold people
I think
on the call.
I want to avoid that in a user-facing space. I think it's more like if the admin just says there must be a secret. That's an idea. I guess that's the way to do it. Say maybe there must be a secret mounted at a specific path for this image to start. You know, like that an image has a dependency on a specific secret. That kind of does make sense. You know, like that there's some.
And yeah, like because it's admin driven, they could like only pluck those secrets whose, you know, data items that, like, you know, you couldn't just include, I mean, you could include arbitrary stuff there, but only actually mount the specific data elements that the admin configures, right? So you can't leak stuff in that way.
Yeah, like I don't know. So like that would look something like configuring a kind, how we've kind of got a spec here for image config. I feel like it would be at the image config level, which is like dependent secret mounts or something, right? Like, I don't know, like envars could be, yeah, I guess that's how it would be. Like rather than, you know, from secret, actually that's the solution here, because that solves the problem we talked about, you know, like letting the admin mount an environment variable or file from a secret, but like that secret is not actually a Kubernetes secret, it's a managed notebook secret, which is internally a Kubernetes secret, but then is created by the user from a template, you know? That feels, I'll just add that here, which is we could have extend the image config spec to allow volume mounts and envars mounts.
I think you can do nice if you put the types there. We can generate forms.
That's what I'm saying. It's like effectively we can say to start a notebook, of.
You need to do this and this and this and the setup this and this and that.
Well, it's kind of
custom form.
implicit as well. Like, so effectively you
Yeah.
say in the image config for this image down here, wherever it is, like say this SciPy image has an environment variable that it doesn't have a specific value. Like we could allow the admin to assign a value, I guess, fine. But we could also say from secret. And that secret, because we can't know for a fact the secret exists, but we can then now prompt the user to create the secret based off some template. And then or mount an existing one that it matches that template from the workspace. So I guess there's a strong technical question around what a managed secret is, you know, like questions. Is there a managed like workspace credential CR namespaced CRD or is it simply a secret with a label? Okay, and then so extend the image config option spec to allow volume mounts, volume, and then we can do volumes as well actually, and vars for anything that is namespace specific, e.g. volumes and secret, envars from secrets. We can then have, we would force the user to, I guess this is also a question as to whether we should do the same concept for volumes to prevent arbitrary volumes being mounted, but that's a separate, like, I don't know, that's an interesting thought process. Right now we abstract it only to PVC. Would force the user to create or mount or select from the existing ones in that namespace a workspace credential that is of the correct type. Select which in the namespace users could then this and so this, I think this makes a lot of sense. Is this enough to explain it? I'm just thinking before you, so we don't forget, for anything.
Yeah, you have to drop, guys.
Yeah, I feel like this
See
is
you.
probably, I think I should probably go as well. I don't want to make everyone stay for too long, but I think this is a really good idea, but I don't know. I'm going to stop the recording for now. I might stay for 1 or 2 more minutes just to discuss any other ideas people have. We really need to think about how to structure these meetings so that we don't get derailed by discussions and actually get to do the stand-up. Okay, we'll think about that for next time. Okay, thanks. I'm going to stop the recording.